Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today alongside Starburst and AWS here to present to you about how we extract the full business value of data products. We're going to talk about what data products are and how we entail that to our Starburst and AWS partnership. I have with me my esteemed speaker and partner in crime here, Vishal Singh, head of data products at Starburst. We've worked on a couple of integrations in the past and looking forward to doing bigger and greater things with our partnership going forward. I'm Anthony Prasad Devraj, Senior Partner Solutions Architect here at AWS. With that being said, without further ado, I will let my friend Vishal take it away.
Thank you, Anthony. First of all, I'm really excited talking about data products and how we can bring the complete business value of data products with the AWS within Starburst Galaxy and across Starburst ecosystem. Um, First question becomes, what are data products? Anthony and I always chat about it. What exactly are data products and how data products are going to evolve? So, Anthony, why don't you take and explain what do you think the data products are?
No, absolutely. Spot on, Vishal. Love the fact that you're putting me on the spot right away. Uh, but I think, as this Venn diagram suggests, I think first of all, we need to understand, how do we define a data product, right? So data product definition can entail to different persona, right? And I think it's important to understand that it always starts with the application, right? So think of data product that can be any application, right, that you offer to your customers that is actually helping them solve a business problem through the use of data, right? Now, if you break it down, we want to break it down into threefold approach, as you call it. Let's start with what usability means, right, at the top. Usability for me and our customers at AWS is when we create a data product, is it actually helping your customer solve a real business problem, right? And it also has to fit in within the existing business process. Because sometimes our customers come to us and say, hey, we've had a process that's working successfully for years. Why do we need to break it, right? So I think it starts from there. Define what we're trying to solve and can it fit with the existing business process, right? That's usability. The second aspect is viability, right? Now, when you talk about viability, I'm referring to the financial sense, so the commercial value that data products brings to our customers, right? It could be, let's say, revenue directly from customers, right? How much are they willing to pay for it, for example, right? Let's talk about even Starburst Galaxy when, Vishal, you can, throw a little more light on that, right? How are we going to improve the proposition or the messaging when we go to market, right? So that's another aspect. And then last but not the least, how do you attract investment, right? How do you improve the valuation of your product, right? And if you remember, Starburst Galaxy is a great example, right? We started off, we figured that there were some gaps, and then we kind of re-architected that, and we got a better product out, right? So that's a great example. And that's what SaaS businesses are looking for, right? Last but not the least, feasibility. When you talk about feasibility, it's nothing but the technical aspect, right? What is the technology that you're using to solve the problem, right? And does your team or do we have the technical expertise building that solution with the right technology? So I just want to stop there, Vishal. I know we've talked about a lot of things, but I just want to give the context to the users as to what we talk about data products at AWS.
And that totally makes sense and resonates when I actually talk to customers. I mean, data in the end, what users are looking for is like they want to treat a data set as for the full principles around the product lifecycle. I mean, taking this and basically, if we double click into these Venn diagram and think and look in the higher level, like what data products could be, you're looking at a data set which actually has a full quality and high quality curated for the business use case, which is goes to your point, Anthony, like usability. How do I know this data is usable? How do I know this data has a full quality around that? Again, viability and discoverability. Like, how can I discover the data set, all my business approved data set in one place? The great piece, like if we have customers working across different regions in AWS, customers who are in EMEA, customers who are in the Europe, in the APAC and US, when the data products or data sets are being created, how can they actually find all the business approved data sets, data products in one place? But in the end, How can a platform evolve and make our customers so that they can govern the data products in a scale? What I mean by like there is always change happening in an organization where the users are coming in, the new data sets are being created. How can you manage the data sets or data products at a scale? By business attributes, by business use cases, and by user attributes based on which location or what job they actually have. And going back to like usability, you want to ensure that data products getting used by both business personas and non-business personas. And you are also ensuring that you are reusing the data products for multiple use cases. So you're not recreating and redoing and copying the data sets again and again for being shared across the organization, which goes to the other point, lower TCOs. If you can actually find all your data sets in a single place, if you're not making many copies of the data sets, if you're not maintaining multiple copies of the data sets to empower many users in the organization, your TCO is going to go down automatically. And the last piece is the foundational. I totally believe, and I'm going to actually ask you, Anthony, what's your opinion on it. I totally believe data products are foundational, which means that you take the use cases, the sales use case, marketing use case, and you can actually build on the top of that as the use case around secondary and tertiary data products. And then you're federating across different use cases instead of actually trying to figure out where your data exists.
Absolutely, spot on, Vishal. And I think just to summarize, what we just both talked about, I think a successful product, right, is always going to, have an overlap of all these things that we just talked about, right? Like usability, viability, and feasibility, and what you talked about, governance, all these, facts that you want to start with the foundation, right? Build an MVP, right? We start off with an MVP, and then, like you said, work with customers, get their feedback, and then iterate over that product, right? And that's how you make a better product. It's not like they say, you don't build Rome in one day, right? It takes several years, right? So that's
Yeah,
how it is.
totally. Going to next slide, if you look at when you think about Starburst data products on built on the AWS ecosystem, is this a data product platform which is for the organization that need to rapidly connect different data consumers with high quality and reliable data sets. And taking to double clicking into like where did we actually look into data analytics lifecycle challenge. And again, Anthony, just here I again looking for, because you're talking to a lot many AWS customers, and also understanding not just the access to data, but there are two personas I encounter in my conversation. Is that I have data producers and I have data consumers. Data producers could be another set of different personas, and so is data consumers. But data producers are always like, I have built this curated set of data sets. I want to make sure that the work I have done in building and curating and transforming my data set, how can I expose it to my data consumers? How can I ensure that my data consumers are not doing any ad hoc workload to create exactly same data sets or data product which have been created by me? And on the other side, the data consumers have a exactly different opposite problem. It's like, I know that my organization have highly curated data sets, but I have no idea where to find it. I have no idea how can I become self-sufficient in finding the quality of these data. Or how do I even utilize the quality data for my analysis? Like, how do I get onboarded? How do I get up and running?
You got me excited when you talked about data producers and consumers because it takes me back to my data engineering days. Still a recovering data engineer. And I was predominantly on the consumer side. As you can expect, today everyone wants to be a data consumer, right? Everyone wants to consume data. How many people want to produce the data and actually want to have the responsibility, like you said, of increasing the visibility, increasing the consumption, and the last but not the least is, okay, I created this massive data set, right? Consumers are going to consume it, but then it could be from multiple upstream data sources, right? Now, what happens if one of those upstream jobs or backfill jobs fails, right? Who's responsible? I think the biggest challenge I've noticed with producers is, okay, whose responsibility is it going to be? Because to your point, the consumer or the end user is ultimately the person who's going to consume the data, right?
Yep.
So the producers could say, hey, well, you are consuming a very curated data set. So why don't you figure out the data quality checks? Why don't you figure out the guardrails to protect the data?
That's correct.
So it's like a chicken and egg problem, right?
Yep. Yeah, I absolutely agree. In fact, like I have seen like consumer being a producer sometime too. And what happens is that and is that now I have like I'm like for example, data consumer. I actually got some data which is being produced for me. And I've created another set of data products based on what. But I am not responsible for the another set of the data sets or data products which I am dependent on, which again becomes into the whole graph of like the maintenance of the data products or data sets from the get-go when it was first curated to from in these completely downstream when it was getting consumed. So somebody has to be responsible. It cannot be one team because we at the end we are looking to drive collaborations across the team. So how can you drive the collaboration and still maintain the full quality on the data sets and data products being consumed in the organization?
Absolutely. And even in the consumer side, right? There, the consumer could act as a producer for another team or another organization, right? Because a consumer could consume the data from the original producer, the source team. They could create another data product on their own, right? A very curated data set. And
Yep.
then another end user would want to tap in onto that curated data set because they're too lazy to figure out how to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, this goes to the next piece, which on the slides we're going to talk, which is on the product lifecycle. And Anthony, I'd love to actually chat with you on what you believe on the product lifecycle of data products.
Absolutely. Vishal, I think it takes me back to my engineering time when I worked with several product leaders and product visionaries like yourself, and sometimes I think there often happens to be a gap between what the product expectation is, how do you link that to the market, how do you link that to the market motion, and how do you link that to the actual implementation and design and engineering effort on the product side, right? So all these persona, like you said, you have to collaborate together. And at AWS, when we start working on a new product, like I said before, the first thing is we want to make sure that we figure out who are the people who are actually going to be using it, right? What are they willing to pay for it, right? So that concept of the product and market fit has to happen at this stage, right? So the initial stage is going to be product market. Where does it fit, right?
Yep.
And now to get there, Vishal, as we're growing too fast in today's modern age, right? With technology, we have to get out a minimum viable product, which is an MVP as we define, right? And I think the customers today understand that for us to move forward, we have to start somewhere, right?
Right.
Now, you can tell me, Vishal, like when you started off, working on Starburst Galaxy, right? What was your experience when, your engineers and product team came to you and said, "Hey, Vishal, we have this great big idea. Where do we start? What's the first step?" Talk to us about your experience there.
No, you're right. I mean, it's kind of saying that one step at a time. Like if we may have a vision where we want to go with Starburst Galaxy, but to your point, if we want to the customers and consumers, or this is where I like the word data product or data as a product, because you're actually following the life cycle of the product itself. You may want to go from distance 1 to distance 100, but you have to travel every step in every direction in the right direction to go to meet the final milestone. In that point, you want to actually start showing your consumers that you are making an effort to build a product for them. And that's why MVP is really important, because you want to actually have the proof of concept or data concept, like what kind of problems are you looking to solve for the consumers. And once you have that concept built in, then you iterate on the top of based on the customer feedback or consumer feedback. To your point, like as a data engineer, and I mean, you being a data engineer, just let me know if this resonates with you. I mean, you don't end up building 100 pipelines on day zero. You actually build something small and then learn from the consumers how and what next to be built.
Absolutely, Vishal. And I think, the other aspect I think, kind of sometimes gets overlooked is the technical debt, right?
Yep.
Because it's important to understand that, not every person, in the room or engineer has access to all the tools and services or has the expertise, right?
Yep.
So I think for example, I want to use a real-time use case where we came up with a product, right? We worked with the product team a few years ago. Now, the intention was we want to scale the product globally, right?
Right.
So my first suggestion to our team was let's make sure we build a product which is robust and scalable across regions, right?
Yeah.
Now, this product doesn't have to have all the features, right? We don't have to have all the P1, P2 features right away because our intention is go global, right? Now, when we're going global, we also have to fathom the fact that we have to build infrastructure in all those locations, right? So that's a lot of work that has to go there. So again, start small to your point, and then once we have a much more robust pipeline, like you said, then we can extend our data pipeline. Then we can extend our application to much bigger use cases.
Exactly.
Um, yeah.
Right. I completely agree because instead of just completely building all the pipelines with no consumer or business goal behind it, it's just like the work is being done without knowing how this whole data set or data product is being consumed in my organization. So where do we take it from there? So what if you look into the and this is another piece which we talked about it, but I want to double click into more. I have built my data products. I have actually built everything, but then how do I ensure that I maintain the quality? And to your point, like the life cycle management of the data products from the time it was first created, from the time it was going to be actually being used for what business use cases. And what I have seen talking to the customers is that poor data quality can impact decisions, cost, and trust. Now, taking the other two sides of the coin, the producers and the consumers, producers have is like I need to deliver the reliable data to my consumers. So I how do I even build and maintain, that is the, I'll actually say it again, maintain trust. Like how to continuously keep maintaining trust with my stakeholder. How do I reestablish trust if the data goes down? Same as a product. There will be outages. There will be some things goes down. But if something goes down, how can I go back and reestablish trust? And how is it proactively how do is it possible to proactively maintain trust around the data itself? But if you look at the data consumer, data consumers have been told like you should be using this data set. This is great quality, whatnot. But as a consumer, if I sell the product, they're like, I have been heard, I've been told this data set has a great quality, but how do I verify the fitness of use? How do I know that when was the trust actually was last time the quality check happened? How do I know that I have some questions and concerns about the quality? How do I get those concerns addressed? Who should I reach out to? So the not just verbatim telling the data consumers that they should trust the data, but how do data consumers continuously keep trusting and also continuously keep verifying the complete trust and the quality of the data products and data sets?
No, absolutely spot on. I think you hit the nail on the coffin with respect to data quality, because data quality affects business decisions.
Yep.
It affects the trust of the stakeholders, right? And when I used to be a data consumer on the other side, we used to consume data from these massive data sets, being generated by several teams, right? And for example, I ended up doing a source system analysis on, one of these data sets when we were building a pipeline for our team, and I noticed that one column showed up with null values, right? So as an example, we actually ended up filing a ticket, right, with the source team saying, hey, is this actually expected, right? Is the application expected to behave this way that you're going to generate null values for this specific column? And guess what? The source team said it is not expected to work that way. We're supposed to backfill with a specific value. So
Yeah.
we were able to identify, go back to the owner of the data, and then we figured out what the problem was. And we were able to work backwards to actually get a solution. But the point we're trying to make is like everything you just said, it's about trust, it's about the quality of data, because even that one column, right, the data coming from that one column can make a huge difference, right, when it comes to taking decisions on the fly. Very important businesses that affect both the producer and the consumer and the end user in the long run.
Absolutely, and Anthony, I'll actually, I love the like point there because you see, like if even the data producers did their best to actually provide the quality set of data products or data
Yep.
set, but it was data consumer who had a question into should this be a null value, and then that's where I think believe the communication can be broken between their consumers and producers, because consumers may be trying to drive some kind of business decisions on those data sets. But if they have concerns like this column should be null, how they actually can go to producers and get those actually concerns prioritized on the producer side so they can actually end up making business decision faster.
Absolutely. That was exactly what was pushed back by the producer. I'll use the same example because,
Yes.
we went to the data producers and they said, guess what? We have an extensive sprint planning right now, and you're one of our many consumers. So, what is the business value to justify prioritizing this? And again, to your point, it's about working with our customers and understanding the business impact, right? Like we talked about, first when you start off, it's the product and the market connection. What is the business impact? Now, if I, as a consumer, had enough data points on the business value, I could have gone ahead to the producer and said, hey, this is the number of customers who are affected, right? This is the amount of revenue we're going to drive by X% over X number of years. If I had gone in with those data points first off, we would have got it prioritized. But eventually, it took a couple of cycles before we got there.
Yeah, one thing I think this is why we have also seen the evolution into data product managers and product owners to actually understand the complete prioritization of what needs to be prioritized and what not over some time.
Spot on. Absolutely.
So, Anthony, I'd love to hear about the AWS modern architecture around the data products and Starburst Galaxy.
No, I think, this is kind of the core modern architecture, data architecture, as we call it at AWS, right? And I think, it's important for everyone to understand that, this is not a solution that fits for every customer, right? And every customer's needs are different. For example, there are certain customers who work with relational databases, right? Their data could be very structured, very finite, limited schema, right? And then you have other, customers who actually have IoT data, right? It could be emitted from IoT devices or click streams. Then you have, users who want to use, the power of big data for search and log analysis, right? Or there's a set of users who want to store it in a data warehouse, right? And there's also a set of users who want to use it for AI ML. But if you look at the center and the core of where the modern data architecture lies, it's all in the data lake, right? And that's what we at Starburst Galaxy, and our folks at AWS, we go to market together with that notion. Everything
Great.
starts with data in S3. And I know, Vishal, we worked on multiple iterations, but without having the beauty of Starburst, and I'll let you come in over here, is that we tell our customers we don't actually have to have everything in S3, but
Yeah.
we can federate across all these individual blocks that we have on either side through Starburst. Can you throw more light on that aspect, Vishal?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things which I really let me actually show you in the demo environment too. For example, if I go here, one of the great part of working with AWS, like you can, like the whole Starburst Galaxy built for the AWS on the focus. You can see that I can run a cluster into different AWS region. But to your point, even the center of data gravity could be in AWS. But what if my data is in Redshift and Snowflake and Postgres and S3? How can I actually quickly get insight out of that query? And that's where the power of Starburst Galaxy comes on top of AWS, because we are using the AWS compute, taking the power of Graviton compute and running the federated query to get the results out of the data set from different layer. Your data could be in the Gravity in S3, but having that data set, having ability to actually control and get the data from different sources without moving data is one of the powerful notion of Starburst Galaxy.
No, no, I love that story, and I think that's what, data engineers and, cloud engineers across the world, I think, want to hear about, right? I think that's the key differentiator that we have here with Starburst Galaxy and AWS. And I think going back to, my point where this framework is not supposed to be a one size fits it all, right? We advise customers to, start off with a basic configuration, see what is working for them, right? Go with the MVP, and then we can work with them, right, to invest and help them invest in the areas that they need to invest. For example, it could be data movement. Let's say the customer is a gaming industry and they think about SLAs, right? Now, obviously, we're going to process data in batches, but then we want to reduce the SLA as much as possible. So how can we help them there, right? So there's ways to optimize that as well. So again, it depends on the customer's use case. The main takeaway of this slide, Vishal, I think everyone needs to understand is, this is the start and it doesn't end here, right? This architecture can scale, you can modify it, and as your product grows bigger, we can also manage data movement, data integration points really easily. And that's the beauty of this architecture.
Absolutely. I mean, the way I see is like, data is going to be evolving into, as you said, like different sources, different system, different geography, different use cases. But there's one thing which is going to be constantly changing is the ability to access data. And that piece is going to get more and more advanced. And if people will need access to data to drive the business insight within a second or within few minutes, so they don't are not waiting on the business is not suffering over the time.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, I was going to talk about this slide because it's important to, substantiate what we talked about, right? In the earlier slide, is that, these are some of the examples of data products that we see at AWS, right? And I would love to pick your brain on how or where Starburst customers predominantly work on, right? So if you look at the left-hand side, I'll start from there. When you talk about dashboards and reports, right? Now, this consists of both derived or aggregated insights, right? And the end user is going to be the business user or someone who needs to have a quick dashboard or report set up for them to arrive at useful business metrics, right? The second category is this is more like for an advanced user, right? So think of the data APIs where you're connecting to the API of a service and then you're running SQL jobs, right? So maybe through Starburst, we have a SQL layer and we can actually connect to one of the connectors that we talked about. It could be Snowflake or whatnot, right? So
Yep.
what does this allow for customers? This allows them to run their own analysis. So we're giving that self-service ability to our end
Agreed.
user to run queries on their own, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
Third category, data collection and indexing. And this is, I think, more like on the massaging of data, right? Like you could have, denormalized data sets. Let's say you have a massive ton of data sets going back 5 years, right? Maybe in advertising, right? So we want to make sure we create a standard denormalized data set that falls into this play. Again, very technical users will be able to curate the data sets, right? Last but not the least, ML model as a service, right? And I think this is where the world's heading to. And I'm sure everyone on this call and this meeting will understand that with the conversation around generative AI, how can we use Starburst Galaxy and our AWS infrastructure, the power that we bring to the table with ML services? I think that's a conversation that I'll be excited to talk about going forward.
Agreed. And again, as you and I chat almost all the time, like these are all the use cases with all our customers. One of the things, like one of the use case, again, to your point, like how was Star Wars Galaxy evolved in the first place? The MVP was to actually empower dashboards and reports. Like, how can we actually make sure our customers are able to write and create dashboard and reports using QuickSight or tools of their choice to actually using the data which can live across multiple sources. But before you even create dashboard and report, you want to do exploratory analysis, not into reporting itself, but within Starburst Galaxy, and thus comes the data APIs. But we are supporting more and more actually services around. You can collect and index the data, which I can actually quickly show the demo. And in the future, which is what our notion is, working closely with AWS to in order to actually project our data products as ML model or as a service. So you can not only creating the data products, but you're actually using as a service to power your machine learning models.
First of all, I want to say, I think, this has been a very enriching conversation, apart from having an enriching data set. But I think what's important to understand is, I think, today customers are not only looking at reducing the time to market, right? That is an important aspect, but it's also simplifying the product as well, right?
Agreed. Yep.
Because I think going back to our MVP conversation, when you start off with a product or P0, right, you go to market, right, together, AWS and Starburst, we go on road shows, we talk about the product just as we're doing right now, and then we get customer feedback. what that allows us to do is that allows us to grow our product. It allows us to make changes incrementally because we're gathering feedback from the field. And so you and I can say, okay, this data product is great, but then we got customer feedback saying we would like some additional columns, right? So how do we iterate on that data product, right? So that's number one. And number two is once you get to that growth phase, right, you want to also deliver incremental value. So how can you evolve your architecture, right? So this is the kind of the blueprint, right, for customers to get started. And based on their use case, they should be able to tweak it to their expectation. And that's where we're here together with AWS and Starburst to help customers make that informed decision.
Totally. And let me actually quickly show a couple of things within the context of a summary, as we talk about a summary, like how AWS and Starburst Galaxy can come together to empower all these concepts. And again, the more to come in the future. And if you, for example, one of the examples which normally I give to talk about Starburst Galaxy is, and this is, and Anthony, just let me know if this resonates, but the customers come in and they actually look for, like, for example, customer data sets. And as I look for the customer data sets and view all the results into where exactly my customer data sets exist, you can see that my customer data sets in S3 Lakehouse, S3 Eng, different buckets have a lot of tags. And I found 1,000 results with the customer. As a user, one of the things they actually really get confused, which are the business approved my data sets? How do I actually, instead of 1,000 data sets, come up with like what has been approved my business? And that's why we added data products. What you can do, you can actually convert your query to just look for your data products and your data sets. So for example, if I go into customer 360 information, I can quickly look, this was a data product, a data set, which has been approved for the users. Understand the schema, understand different tags. And the great piece, it can be used across multiple use cases and multiple tables in the organization. Going back, and this is what we have done around data products, and this is how just is getting started. Like, not only you can look at the list of all the data sets exist, but you can quickly look at all the business approved data products and data sets in one place. And here, let me actually go, like, the other point I want to make is the governance of scale, which if I go into view, look at the view schema, my other this data product with a pharmaceutical manufacturing exists in S3, has 3 different tables. But I believe that I want to actually just share the only subset of the tables with my users or with my different the vendors. What I've done is, like, every time I made the policy where every time I actually tag something by customer.vendors, that will get shared with the vendor user role. So if I go to the vendor user role here, and if I look at the pharmaceutical manufacturing, and if I look at the view schema, you'll see that the user just have access to only 2 tables, does not see 3 tables. And going back to another user, which is manufacturing department, they have access to all the 3 tables in that data products. But as a manufacturing owner, if I believe that this table should not be shared with vendor, and as I remove the tag and go back to the vendor information, you'll see that now the vendor does not have access to that table. And this can be extended not only on the table side of it, but actually on the column side of it. I've also made a rule that any PII information should not be exposed with the vendor. So I go to the customer information, I can see that they do not have access to any PII. I can even remove city birth, and if I actually remove this tag and I go back, you'll see that birth year will now be exposed to the vendor, and which will actually come in here. So within a second, now you're governing your data set based on the business attribute. And this is where the fun piece happens, is that, which we talked initially, you can take any query, federated query, and convert that into a data product. And as you convert that query, you can actually publish that as a part of data set into data product which already exists, or create new product from the query itself. So the amazing piece is that because of Starburst functionality, a Starburst function built on the top of AWS, you can actually gather all the data sets within AWS ecosystem and convert that into data product and share with the data set and data consumer, while governing using our attribute-based access control or our resource-based access control.
No, thank you very much, Vishal, for that explanation. In fact, you answered a question that I had in mind around data governance and PIA data. So thank you for actually walking us through that. And I know we announced our lake formation integration last year, and I think that's also another important aspect when we talk about data governance and administering the right access right to the
Yeah.
users. And I think no one wants to be monitoring 10,000 S3 buckets every time a file goes in and assign read-only permissions. No. And I think with the power of what Starburst Galaxy offers inbuilt, we're able to combine that with lake formation to actually extend that permission control beyond just one use case. And I think that's a great example of how we've come together as a team to build a better solution.
You absolutely nailed it, Anthony. I mean, I cannot be more proud on the all the platform built around the AWS. In fact, taking advantage of every ecosystem, every feature, every service in AWS, and building the complete platform has been, I'll say, as a product manager, it's been amazing.
Likewise, the pleasure is all ours, and I think that's one of the most interesting jobs that we have on hand, because I think it's working with partners, going together at events, and talking about all of these great features and educating the end user on how to leverage the best of both worlds. I think that's what makes our job really exciting.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Vishal, for your expertise and your time here. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening to us. Really appreciate it.